Hey there, gamers. This is Toby from the Secret Levels podcast here. I wanted to tell you about our fundraising campaign we're hosting this year from November 1st to December 31st called Gameboree. Gameboree has been happening for 6 years in support of St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. In total, Gameboree has raised over $11,000. This year, we have some awesome prizes we'll be giving away, and we'll even be doing some special streams over on twitch.tv/TobyVonDoom. For more info on how to donate and when the stream schedules are, please visit badsecretmedia.com/Gameboree. Donate to win some prizes, but also just to help the kids. Donate today and make a difference. badsecretmedia.com/Gameboree. GAMEBOREE.
Welcome back to the Main Quest podcast. It is that time of year again, dear listeners. It is when we take video games and we put them on a pedestal and we hold them up to the light, I guess, and lovingly tell them, you're a good video game. And maybe even you were the best video game. And then, of course, we put it back on the shelf and never touch it again because we're still knee-deep in Baldur's Gate 3. That means it's Game of the Year season, everybody. And tonight we are still asking, what does that even mean? What kind of games deserve that title? Does the community put too much weight on Game of the Year? And does Game of the Year actually mean anything anymore? And we kind of answered some of those questions last year, touched on them briefly perhaps. This is, of course, the second Game of the Year Symposium, which implies that there was a first, but unfortunately, our discussion ran long, and we didn't get to talk about everything that we wanted to. So, this year, everyone is back to do what no gamer has ever done before. Finish something.
Oh my God. He's not wrong.
So, of course, as you can hear, I have reassembled the most brilliant morons that I can find.
Hell yeah.
And we will start with, I think I'll go in order of introduction of who has appeared the most on this podcast. And we will start with, of course, the person with more guest appearances in 1 year than anybody should have on this podcast. Their first appearance on the show was just about this time this year. They are one half of many podcasts, including Fun and Games and the Reignite podcast, possibly even this one. I'm, of course, talking about Matt Storm. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I kept that co-host seat warm, so when other people jumped in, like Eric did for Super Mario World, it was nice and cozy. Farted a few times, kept it nice and warm. No, I'm happy to be back. Thank you. I bet. Honored to hold that title, especially in 1 year. Couldn't get rid of me, but I'm excited to talk Game of the Year again. It was a lot of fun last year.
Matt, blink twice if Keith is holding you hostage.
I do have to ask, and I will ask this of everybody, what do you think is winning Game of the Year this year?
I mean, off the top of my head,
we talked about a pre-show,
yeah.
So we kind of, we're throwing stuff around, but
I think this is another underdog year like Astrobot last year, which I didn't predict, but it did win. So I think Clair Obscur Expedition 33 takes it this year. That's my guess.
I was going to say the same thing. So, yep, I would vote Clair Obscur or Arc Raiders. If the big game gets it, Clair Obscur. If the underdog gets it.
Wait your turn, Kade. God damn it.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know it was my turn or not my turn.
Well, you know what? We may as well go there. My next guest, you can hear them talking about making all great games even better all over your Instagram, TikTok, and even YouTube feeds, including talking to people big and small, creators big and small, about their gaming memories as prophesized by Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost. It is, of course, Kade Call of Gaming Memories Podcasts. How you doing, man?
Great to have you back. Interrupting. If you ask some people, I'm ruining games. So I guess just take your pick. If you're an OG, if you're like, I love games and original hardware and on the CRT and everything else is an abomination, I would recommend not checking my page out. I'll just make you angry.
The games didn't look like that when I was a kid, Kade.
Yeah, how dare you make things more accessible and better and easier to play?
Wasn't that blurry when I played it?
My most common comment lately has been, behold, how to take the soul out of a game. There's just a very, very passionate subset. And I get it. OG hardware is a magical thing. CRTs, I have one I'm setting up right now to have like a true retro station on the side. I get it. But so anyway, I don't think any of you guys are in that camp, but any listeners, if that's your camp, then I would just move on to somebody else.
Since you already talked about what you think is going to win Game of the Year, I want to ask you, what's a game that came out this year that you've played and you were like, I can fix this?
I can fix it? Oh.
Like a bad relationship where you're like, I can fix her.
Well, I don't really fix anything. I play around with like way smarter people who mod stuff. I just kind of aggregate what other smart people do and put it together. So I don't have the skills to fix anything. But we were talking about before we started recording, I played through Chronos and New Dawn, and it has like a game-breaking save bug. And I would absolutely love if somebody in the community, for PC, I should say, has a game-breaking save bug. And there are workarounds, and people in the community have uploaded like multiple save files to help you get around it. But if there's anyone out there smart enough, please fix that bug, because the developers have been disbanded, and the game's pretty damn good. But you can't really get through it because of that. It's drama. So I would fix that if I could.
And my last two guests, I believe they both have a tie for most appearances on my podcast this year. So I'll go with the one who was on the most recent, and that is, of course, the man, you know him well from The Unlockables. You can hear him talking about some of the best RPG franchises on that podcast. And you can also hear him on another podcast called 9 to 5 Bears, coincidentally also talking about some of the best real-life turn-based RPGs, football. You know him well. It's Eric Gess. Welcome back, man.
Thanks. I've pretty much given up on video games just to be a sports podcaster now. But no, that's not entirely true. But thank you for having me back. It's always an honor. This was a lot of fun last year. I was super honored to get labeled a moron alongside all of you guys. That was truly the honor of 2024, and here's hoping we can reach the same heights this year.
We still might be called morons by the end of this, which is totally fair. And for you, sir, who do you think is going to win game? I said who like it's a person. What do you think is going to win Game of the Year this year?
For me right now, I'm going back and forth on this, so I probably won't decide until I do any of my end of year stuff. It's a tie right now between Hollow Knight Silksong and Expedition 33. Those two games are by and far away the two best experiences I've had playing video games this year.
But if you had to pick one, who do you think Keely's picking?
I would say Expedition 33 is probably in a slight lead right now.
All right. Well, that only leaves one person left. And when my next guest isn't writing and illustrating comics or rowboating at an Amon Amarth show, you can hear him on Deleted Saves slaughtering your favorite video games in the most educational sense possible. I am, of course, talking about Philip Morgan. How you doing, Phil? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, and glad to be back as always.
And your game of the year, or not your game of the year, but what do you think is going to win Game of the Year this year?
Well, even though I haven't played it yet, it's on my to-purchase list when money is no longer tight, I'm going to guess it's probably going to be Expedition 33.
Wow. Wow, I wouldn't say clean sweep, because mine's going to be actually a little bit different. My guess is going to be Ghosts of Yote. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later when we get to one of these talking points here. But yes, welcome. I'm glad everybody can reassemble once again, just about the same time this year as last. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm really excited, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot to get off our chests. So why don't we just launch into this thing?
Do your podcast feel underleveled? Sick of content that doesn't overclock your ear holes? Crack open a cold can of Hell Piss Zero Mercy. It might sound like an energy drink, but it's actually the main quest Patreon attacking your nervous system. For less than the cost of a loose copy of Perfect Weapon, you'll get bonus episodes recorded in an abandoned KB Toys. Early access to episodes before you even know you want them. Listen as your host Keith researches and revisits and re-evaluates retro games with a mix of sarcasm, sincerity, and that thing scientists call good podcasting.
No actual scientists are consulted in the making of this podcast. Good podcasting is not a medically recognized condition, and any resemblance to sincere analysis is purely coincidental.
We gave the Main Quest Patreon to a test group. We're still sorting out the consequences.
Ever since I joined the Patreon for the Main Quest podcast, Keith has unleashed the beast in me. Ever since the Primal Rage episode, I now go to random children's birthday parties in an inflatable T-Rex costume to brighten their day. And if
The Patreon gave me emotions. I do not want them. Please kill me. It's okay to like a video game.
Join now before the algorithm bans it for being too powerful. Link in the show notes, or scrawl Main Quest in blood on your nearest Wii U gamepad and whisper Keith 3 times into the mic.
Hell Piss trademark has not been evaluated, approved, or acknowledged by any real government agency. Side effects may include stick drift, polygonal hallucinations, involuntary bricking, aggressive XP drip, LAN party flashbacks, emotional damage caused by hot takes, spontaneous quick time events, and a strong desire to rank every Gex game. Do not consume if you are pregnant, wear deodorant, or currently dating. Contact Dr. Mario if symptoms persist. May permanently overwrite your taste profile. Void where prohibited.
So last year, I began the discussion off with the question of what does Game of the Year mean to you? And we pretty much all agreed that Game of the Year is personal and it's about emotional connection. And it's not all just about mechanics and graphics. We also acknowledged how messy the official business is in the industry as far as the actual Game Awards goes. And then the stuff regarding that as far as like the marketing, the politics. We got into some platform tribalism and all of that stuff. So I want to ask, a year later, has the meaning of Game of the Year changed for you at all? And I'll kick things off with you, Kade.
I unmuted so I wouldn't be tempted to butt in and interrupt again. I have a bad habit. I don't think it's changed. I don't remember exactly everything I mentioned last year, but I was thinking about this podcast, and I am slightly interested in what the game of the year is, just because I'm interested in the gaming industry and have been. And if I've never played it, if it's nominated or wins, I will probably go try it out. So it does mean a little bit, but very rarely is the game of the year my game of the year. And it's only happened one time, and I mentioned it last time. I didn't play it the year that it won, but I played it because it won, and that was Control. And lots of people felt like that game undeservingly won and didn't deserve to win, and I heard a lot of negative things about it. And I ended up loving that game, and it was my game of the year the next year. So outside of that, it's personally, I don't, if it wasn't for this podcast, I probably wouldn't even looked up to see what might be the nominees. I would have just found out when it got announced and just like, oh, okay, cool. It's not, I don't read anything anymore. IGN, Kotaku, nothing. Like I literally I might check out Steam reviews on something, mainly like, is it optimized or there bugs? It's just so accessible now. You can find the games you were interested in. You can watch trailers, and you can decide where to spend your money and where not to spend your money. And I don't really rely on any sort of media for those type of decisions. So I don't know if I'm the right person to ask. It doesn't mean a lot to me, other than just curiosity.
Okay, so it sounds like from because I did re-listen to our episodes, you've pretty much more or less stayed the same.
Okay.
So
okay,
cool. Yeah, Matt.
So, I mean, I think I'm in the same place. I think I'm a little more exhausted this year. I mean, there have continued to be more layoffs. The conversation around AI is getting worse. It's being forced into a lot of things. I mean, Arc Raiders has we mentioned earlier, caught a lot of flack because there is voice acting done with AI that's not done by people. And I don't want to get into the morality of that, even though I do think it sucks. But like, I'm kind of with Kade in the sense that like I care less and less about what other places are saying about Game of the Year. I mean, this is the first year in a long time where my Game of the Year might line up with the Keeleys. Typically, like I loved Astrobot last year. It wasn't my number one though. Dragon Age was, which was nobody's number one. That's not true. Some people love that game, but it was mine because it had a bigger emotional impact on me because I love that franchise. I love that studio, all of that. Whereas here with Expedition 33, if that wins, that's the first time that a game that I really loved that came out so early in the year also would actually take the title. You know, whereas on the other hand, something like Silksong, if that wins, I've now played the first couple of hours of it. It is a good video game. Everybody's right. But like, I don't think it's going to be the game that would hook me. But as far as how I feel emotionally, I think I'm in the same place, but I think I am definitely a little more beaten down, a little more exhausted. I think the industry just gets more and more exhausting, and Game of the Year functions in that machine. Now, credit to Keeley, after we recorded last year, he did say some stuff. Like, he's never going to be lambasting companies and other things, but he did speak up for people losing their jobs. He did do some small moments about the games industry and how we need to help people, you know, recover from these layoffs and stuff. So, like, something was better than nothing, right? I'm not going to give him all the credit in the world, but he did more than I expected, which was appreciated. And so that gives me a little more hope. But like, you know, I think ultimately I'm emotionally the same place, but personally a little more beaten down than I was last year.
I don't remember what I said exactly last year, so I apologize. This year I don't know. I'm in an odd place because I'm feeling like I spent more time this year with games that were done by smaller or more independent teams than a lot of the really big budget stuff. And I've been enjoying a lot more of that. Not that I haven't played a lot of AAA games, I have, but it's more than 50% with the smaller teams. I think we really should be starting to give a lot more credit to those smaller developers. I don't really give a damn at this point what the big boys have to say. A lot of this is it's theater. It's absolute theater. And I know that's what it is. I know that's what gets the people in the seats. It's what sells. I know the CEOs and the C-suite could be selling anything. I know I've said before they could be selling beef. They could be selling tires. They could be selling toilet paper. They don't really care. They just got an inroad here. So I'm beginning to think less and less like Matt that it doesn't matter. or at least not matter in that case, whereas I don't care so much. Now, I will always be, because I'm an artist myself, I'll always be for the artists. I'll be for the illustrators, the writers, the designers, the developers not to lose their jobs. I want a product made with human hands. I don't really want an AI product. My concern going forward into the future is that AI is going to get shoved into everything no matter what, regardless of what anyone wants. This is just the genie is out of the bottle. We're absolutely going to just have to deal with this. People are going to lose out. They're going to lose their jobs. Things are going to get replaced. And I think in a lot of cases, the buying public may not really give a shit.
Doki Doki Literature Club.
Because if they can do something as easily as write a term paper with AI and not have to bother, why would they really care what their entertainment is presented as? To me, that's a little dystopian. But at the same time, that may be the direction we're going. Now, hopefully, I am wrong. But because I'm kind of on the front lines on the art side, I have a lot of concerns that I have yet to have a good answer for.
Mm. You were really about to open up a big can of worms, talking about AI and the value of video games. That is a discussion for a whole other podcast, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Hey, who knows? Maybe we can save that for another day, Phil.
Maybe, yeah.
Eric, has your view of Game of the Year changed since last year?
I think personally, in terms of the way that I evaluate what's important to me in video games, I don't think that's changed as much. I'm after having created stuff for the internet around video games for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm pretty comfortable and confident in how I evaluate video games and the things that I like about them and the things that draw me to specific games that I then consider for the Game of the Year pageantry end of year stuff. So not that my approach to it hasn't changed as much, but in terms of the conversation that I personally want to have and to see around video games, I think this year was the first year that I really, and let me preface this by saying, like, I'm not trying to like bash anybody or anybody that makes any kind of content around anything else, or on the internet. But the conversation that was happening around Game of the Year, specifically this year, kind of started early when Expedition 33 came out. And right away, it's just the internet was flooded, Blue Sky and Twitter and my TikTok feed and videos just flooded the internet of, this is Game of the Year, this is Game of the Year, this is Game of the Year. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but what beyond the surface evaluation of Expedition 33 is Game of the Year makes it a Game of the Year, makes it what we're calling one of the best games this year, probably going to go on to be a defining game of this decade for sure. What about it? What about it? I'm looking for a little bit more meat on that analysis and that conversation outside of kind of our circle, who has a lot of great people who think about video games and the way they analyze video games. Outside of our circle, that conversation was just so shallow that I just kind of was lost taste for it and just kind of really, I don't know, kind of checked out. And disappointed is not the right word, but I guess maybe I felt a little bit disappointed. And then when the other big contenders started to come out this year, like Death Stranding 2 and Donkey Kong Bonanza got a bit of a run in the summer. And then the conversation shifted to, oh, here comes Donkey Kong Bonanza. That's going to take away Game of the Year from Expedition 33. Or, oh, no, it's not Expedition 33 now. It has to be Death Stranding 2. And I'm like, why? Why is it these games? Why are you saying these things? You're just saying it as a matter of fact that it should be this thing or that thing. Where's the evaluation? Where's the media literacy? Where's the critical analysis around these things? Like, to me, that is more important than this game winning an arbitrary award that not only Jeff Keighley gives out, but every other media outlet and everybody that has podcasts gives out at the end of the year as well. Where's the meat? Where's the juice on that analysis? What did you take away from it? Maybe what I took away from playing Expedition 33 was different than what you did. I'm curious about hearing that conversation. And outside of our circle, I was bombarded with just this like pissing contest of, no, this game has to win. No, this game has to win. It has to be Expedition 33. It has to be Death Stranding 2. It has to be Arc Raiders or Silksong or whatever. And it's almost like kind of excuse the term, dick measuring contest, the point where it's like, this game has to win. And I already can foresee when the Game Awards come around and when there are nominations tomorrow and when we get to the final awards, that people are going to be pissed and take it personally like they did last year, that their game didn't win Game of the Year. Like that is some kind of critique on their likes and opinions. So that whole side of it just kind of really tired me out and kind of disappointed me. I think when evaluating these things for something like a Game of the Year, I need to see more. I want to see more. That, to me, is what I'm personally looking for in conversations like this.
Are you so the rest? And as for me personally, my view of Game of the Year hasn't really changed. I didn't really care about it last year. I don't really care about it now, and even less so. I'm not really in the discussion about what comes out in any given year anymore. I feel so left out of the discussion as far as video games because I'm not really on social media that much anymore. So my online presence has been neutered within at least the past 8 months or so. But some things get through from listening to content that you guys put out, or even just like you guys sharing stuff with me from time to time. So my ear is kind of to the ground. And things do get filtered through. But to your point, Eric, the 5 of us have agreed that like we don't really care too much about what the bigger outlets are saying. We kind of more or less care about what like everybody in our community and kind of like the smaller branches that come off of us are kind of talking about, right? And so I guess my question to you is, since you have kind of been more or less plugged into this, at least that's what it sounds like to me. We talked about incentivizing certain games over others the last time we sat down and talked to each other. For those content creators and for like the general public, do you feel like it's more or less kind of like people are almost seeking validation for the games that they played?
Yeah, I think that could be a component of it, because I feel like people's tastes are very closely tied to like with their pride. And I feel like if people are not validated in their tastes, people kind of take it personally. You know what I mean? So like this happened last year when Astrobot won, and it happened the year before when Baldur's Gate won and Spider-Man lost. And a bunch of people who play those games that have different views think that Spider-Man is like a pinnacle game. Like that's what represents video games the best. And they might not be wrong in their opinion, because Game of the Year is a purely subjective exercise. Things are going to like emotionally connect with you different than, we all will have different ways of evaluating things. So I just think that people now are so like chronically online, and their tastes and their opinions are so much of like who they are, that when their opinion is not validated in the highest order, I feel like they kind of take that a little bit personally, and then it kind of turns into hostility on the internet.
I mean, I think the internet makes everything worse, basically. As much as I need it to do a lot of what I do, I've kind of stopped trying to have nuanced conversations on the internet. If I recommend a game that I like and someone says, "Oh, I'll go check it out," like, great. I'll say, "Hey, let me know what you thought." But like the like naysaying or hatred or bile spewing, it's exhausting. It ties into what I was saying before. And like, yeah, I mean, I still stand by Game of the Year as more personal, and then when the awards happen and people start, I think it's also, I think I brought this up last year, but again, I did not do my homework and re-listen like Keith did. It's capitalism of it all. I think you spend $400, $500, $600 on a box, and then you can only buy games for that box, and then that box's games don't win. You want to justify that giant purchase, and like I'm privileged enough to have multiple consoles and a PC, and so like I don't really feel that alienation of gaming. But for someone who only had the $450 for a Switch 2 this year, and that's all they play on, when Donkey Kong doesn't win something, they may feel slighted, which is still ridiculous. But like, there's a path through to that logic that I see, even if I don't agree.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, realistically, yeah, I think in a lot of cases, Now, I know Eric said chronically online. I say terminally online. I kind of treat a lot of the onlineness of people like the late stages of tuberculosis at this point. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of almost like manufactured anger again in the late part of the year. I've been sort of paying attention to the situation going on with Microsoft and Xbox. And for those of you who don't know, it's looking like Xbox may be doing the same thing eventually that Sega does, where it just becomes a publisher of software instead of starting to manufacture any kind of hardware, even though they're planning for their next sort of hardware piece, which looks to be a handheld. So all the prideful that are all in an Xbox or have a lot of investment in it are sounding alarm bells. And now that Steam or Valve has thrown its hat into the ring by throwing out its own console, which is a sort of dumbed down mini PC, that group is starting to get really worried, like, oh, how could Gabe do this versus the people like Gabe is going to save us all? And I'm like, he's a fat man who has obvious heart condition who just bought a ridiculous yacht. He looks like what's his name that's founded Scientology at this point. So don't know what to tell you there. While at the same time, everyone's turning around and going, well, if Xbox leaves, is Sony going to have a, commanding share of the market? I don't know. Do you know? Are you in the boardroom? I don't know. Don't give a shit.
Doki Doki Literature Club.
We won't know until it happens. But it keeps going back to, as I think a lot of you said, they're trying to justify their ridiculous amount of money purchase. And like Matt, I am privileged to have a PC, a couple different consoles. I've gotten to play them throughout the year. I don't personally feel as attached to that sort of rage, where it's like, well, then I can just simply hop over to the other thing and go and enjoy the game I wanted to enjoy, regardless of what platform it has been released on. But if you're not that person on that platform and you have something else, then yes, you are going to want to do it. And a lot of people do tie their choice in games to the same way they tie their choice to bands. They're tied their choice to music, to movies, things like this. It's all this sort of stew of entertainment that when you should be more interested in what value are you bringing to your community, what things are you doing out there to help people, you're more worried about this entertainment box. And that's what you seem to be putting your pride behind. And from a armchair psychologist viewpoint, that's incredibly worrying.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of what you guys are talking about has to do with a lot of monetary validation, like validating your purchase over something more emotional, in which something Eric brought up was just how emotional people seem to get about what is either nominated or what gets picked as game of the year, because either their favorite game got left out, or I totally just blanked. While I try to remember what I was going to say, Kade, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think you guys, to sum it up, I think everybody hit on the points. I think the first thing I wanted to reiterate is Matt brought up that he's frustrated with the internet. Remember that meme or that scene in Star Wars where it's like, you're supposed to be the chosen one. You're supposed to bring balance to the Force. That's how I feel about the internet. I was really stoked about the internet coming up, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of turned out to be like an inversion of what we thought it was going to be. I still love the internet. I work on the internet and make my living on the internet, obviously. So I don't want it to go away. But I think the internet amplifies the next three things that you guys brought up. So that's like the context. Everything exists in the internet. Number one, Eric brought up people get emotionally attached. I think if people don't have a certain amount of grounding, they cannot separate their opinions from their identity or their taste from their identity. This happens in religion. This happens we see it in all of the subjects. So when someone says the game you love is bad, it feels like they're saying you as a person are bad. And then they react accordingly. And then the internet amplifies it because it rewards that type of engagement. You have the monetary value that Matt brought up, which I think is sunk cost fallacies is a tale as old as time. It's not quite a sunk cost fallacy, but it's like a cousin to it. The internet has allowed people to do false amplification to help with engagement and clicks and money. And that's happening in every industry, and that's happening in the gaming industry. I'm not saying it's like a grand scheme, but if, say, you run a gaming page or you run a channel, or like you are incentivized to maybe do things like that. Either amplify certain things, run bots or whatever, or engage with certain things or post certain things because they're going to get rage engagement. And it's all this big incentive pool. And I think a lot of it's noise. And most of the people I talk to in real life, or even friends that I talk to online that I've never met in real life, but we have a one-on-one conversation, they're not getting angry about Spider-Man 2 not winning. I think most people, I guess the question I'm asking is, my suspicion is that noise online represents a vocal minority, and I think half of it's fake anyway. But it's real in the sense it kind of like moves the needle in a real way. So it's just kind of, it's not a fully formed thought, but I think that's partially what's going on.
Lists on the internet became very engaging from like 2012, between like 2012 and like 2018. We were going crazy for lists. And to be honest, I mean, it's fun making list-based content. I have a fun time doing it. It's easy to do. And I think that's why a lot of people like to do it. But when it comes to like game of the year stuff, and when we get to this time of year, it's kind of like what you said, Kate. It just kind of feels like it's a lot of background noise, and just like a lot of fake opinions are out there just to get engagement. So it's just these content creators creating easy content. And that includes Jeff Keighley to some extent. Obviously, he's got a lot of money, so it's big content, right? So it's basically kind of a larger version of what everybody else is doing. And so it's easy content that begets easy engagement, if that makes sense. And it just kind of feels like this constant cycle of announcements and showcases and the world premieres and us kind of like talking about it, where it seems like nobody in this room on this call probably has like the same exact game of the year, right? I don't know. I feel like crowning a game of the year is sort of becoming obsolete.
It is.
Is there anything in that statement?
I think,
or am I being ridiculous?
I think it's ironic that all of us said we don't personally particularly put a ton of weight into the game of the year. We also think the internet is getting weird, and we criticized that type of content. Yet we're here making that type of content, sort of. We're not like running through a list right now. So the reason I bring that up is it's obsolete to us, but we're still talking about it. And so it's not obsolete, and I don't think it's going to become obsolete. How do I say it? In the zeitgeist, I guess. Maybe I'm out of touch. I don't have any friends that are like 18, 19, 20. There's some kids I train with. I don't really talk to them too much about games. Maybe it's a big deal for the younger generation, but all my friends online that are into games, all my friends in real life that are into games, we're living life and we hear about Game of the Year, and it doesn't really impact us. But it also moves the needle. It moves units. It makes money. So it's, as long as that happens, I don't think it can become obsolete, because money just, it rules the system. So I think maybe it's a long-winded to say it's sort of obsolete to a lot of people, but because it makes money, it will never die.
Will never die.
So if I can springboard off that, I'm glad Kate brought that up, because my point was going to kind of like mirror that as well. I think Game of the Year is obsolete in the sense that I think I told the story last year about how I remember going to buy my copy of The Witcher 3 and the little like chevron on the front of it said over 250 Game of the Year awards. And I was like, well, what, like if everyone's giving it out, like, what is it like? What does it matter? Like, what are we doing here? I think Game of the Year in like that sense is becoming obsolete because like now, like with having a podcast and like social media, the short form video and stuff like that, everyone can just give out a Game of the Year. And it's just kind of become an overwhelming mass. I think the part of it that's been elevated specifically is the stuff that Jeff Keighley has done. Now, at the end of the day, I have been known to crack a number of jokes at Jeff Keighley's expense because I'm a little jokey jokester on the internet. I like to get into some shenanigans every now and then. I genuinely believe that Jeff is a force for good in the industry. I genuinely believe that he does care and like about video games and care about the product that he puts out. He obviously works very hard on it. But I have to give credit to Jeff for the incredible sales job that he has done in selling us the Game Awards, because since he launched that in 2014, that has become the premier arbiter of what awards games win, like throughout, like at the end of the year. Like I see that everyone talks about that and just that. Nobody really cares about what IGN says or games. Maybe some people do. I mean, if you have friends that work there, but the general massing buzz noise of the internet doesn't really care about IGN's Game of the Year, or they can just like go to their preferred publication and get their satisfaction that way. But people seem to think that the arbiter of truth of what games win the awards and what games are worth talking about is Jeff Keighley's award show. And again, credit to him for the sales job that he has done and turned that into a gigantic platform. I mean, it had like over 100 million viewers last year across all of its channels. So he's obviously dominated that space and really consolidated that conversation into his product. But at the end of the day, too, I think we have to realize that the Game Awards is not just a game, like an award show to recognize Game of the Year. It's, to me, I view its overarching purpose as more marketing for the industry as a whole. I look at it more as like a marketing event. It feels to me more like a Steve Jobs like product launch, showing off all these video games, and the awards kind of take like a secondary like backseat. So it's obsolete in the way that outlets used to give out the award, and we used to care about what IGN or GameSpot or Game Informer all said. But now the specific conversation, and like Kate said, all the content that gets made, and I've talked to Keith about this year, gets made around the Game Awards. It's what do we think is going to be the Game of the Year nominees for the Game Awards? Or in July, it's like, what games do we think are Game of the Year so far? Or when a good game comes out in March, it's like, do we think this is going to show up at the Game Awards? Like that whole, like the Game Awards itself has spawned a whole cottage industry of content, like Cade said, and it does numbers and it gets views because people look at that, and credit to Keighley's sales job, as the arbiter of the truth.
Yeah, I mean, and to jump on that, like, so two things. One, I agree, and I think that it's also filling a hole, right? There was no official video game award show,
yes,
and Jeff kind of made it. And we're seeing that a little bit. Like, to come clean on this episode, because it's new since last year, I'm one of the judges for the Indie Game Awards this year. It's an incredible production put on by 6-1 Indie. It's just indie games, and I'm getting to judge, which means I'm playing a lot of games in a short amount of time. Champagne problems. But that said,
the call is coming from within the house,
right?
No.
but to that end, also 6-1 Indie is doing a lot to like honor specific sections of the indie game industry, solo devs, games for impact, women-led games, trying to do more than the generic game awards are doing also. But even still, that's 2 award shows, right? In fact, the Indie Game Awards is getting a lot of buzz this year. It's only second year existing, because there's only 2 award shows. Like, there's the DICE Awards and other things, right, that are more industry, like embedded in the industry stuff. But there are these are the 2 more pop culture award shows now. There's just not as many as in TV or movies and stuff, which we talked about last year. The other thing is, as far as it being obsolete, I think it's obsolete for me. I think I agree with Eric and Kate saying that, like, it does numbers, it's in the industry, it sells games. But, like, for me, I watch the Game Awards because I really want to watch them. I'm genuinely curious. I want to see all the world premieres. And, you know, I do get wrapped up in the marketing machine. I'm happy. I'm excited for every Nintendo Direct. Like, I like getting hyped about that stuff. But for me personally, I care more about what Dave Jackson, to throw a name that we all know, his top 10 games of the year are, right? What's his number one? Because I trust his opinion. And it's the same with like writing. Like, I don't generally care what Polygon, Kotaku, IGN, or Game Informer are doing, but like a friend that I know who writes for that site, I want to know their game of the year. I want to know their top 10. I think because journalism is personality based, it's always been subjective and not objective. Always. I care about those personalities, right? Like, I'm listening for game of the year because I care what that specific person's game of the year is, because that might mean something to me in a way that whatever wins the Keeleys, sure. I mean, look, again, when Baldur's Gate 3 won, it was great. When Astrobot won, it was great. These were somewhat considered underdog stories because it was, types of games that don't typically win those awards. They weren't the hyper-realistic AAA prestige games like Last of Us. So for those games that are more nerdy, more unique to win, I think there'd been some groundswell. It's why I think there's some excitement for Claire Obscura Expedition 33, too many words, to win this year, because it's a turn-based RPG. When's the last time a turn-based RPG won a major award from anything, right? Unless it was Final Fantasy, which I love, but like, it's less common. And so I think that kind of stuff it means more now, and is why that groundswell is happening. But I think for me personally, it's as effective as the Oscars, the Golden Globes, or anything else are, right? The Tonys, like, fun to watch. I don't really care. Might get me thinking about something I might have otherwise ignored. But I don't think they have. I think it's the sales cachet is more important these days than the quote unquote cultural cachet. But also, as Kate alluded to, or Phil actually, we're all chronically online or terminally online. And so it's a little different, I think, the way we engage it versus the, folks who are just playing a couple games a year, which I think is part of it too.
I think if you're chronically online or more online based, I think what you said is where I would argue, or I would guess, the majority of the population is whoever their preferred voice or content creator or writer is that they've learned to trust. That means more to them than the Keeley Awards. But the Keeley Awards are like a big, bread and circus, like everyone goes to it. So it's a cultural thing. But I think personally is, hey, I really like this guy over here, or this guy on YouTube who has similar tastes. I'm really excited to see what he says, because I'll probably go and try some of the games that I haven't played if he says they're up there, or she says she's up. I think that's more important for a big chunk of the gaming population, is whoever their preferred voice is.
I think, in some cases, and as Cade said or alluded to, it is with no small sense of irony that we're sitting here. Although we've generally agreed that we don't really care and aren't swayed by this, we're talking about it. Mostly, again, the people I know that are into games are y'all, everyone around their age. They're in their 30s, 40s, maybe late 20s. We're kind of in the know. We've grown up with this. We've matured with this. We've watched games mature with us. I'm a middle school teacher in my day life. My students don't know what any of this stuff is. I could talk to them, and they're all mobile phone gamers. They're asking what, Clash of Clans is doing, some kind of, I don't know, anime-based game, other stuff like this. All of this material is to hell and gone. It's over their heads. They don't really care about it. It's not like they dislike it. They just don't know kind of where we're in the ballpark and talking about it. That being said, it seems to me there's been almost an inordinate rise of like Nintendo Directs or Xbox upcomings, PlayStation's up, state of play sort of this thing. And there's a lot of world premieres. The Keeley Awards are a fantastic marketing arm because they do world premieres. And for me, it's more of like, I'm curious about what might be coming up if something catches my interest, but I'm not sitting there watching them at this point. I'm more like, okay, give me the Spark Notes version. I was about to say Cliff Notes, but that would have told my age way too much. Give me the Spark Notes version of what the hell happened, what was this about. I'll watch the trailer if I'm interested. If I'm not, I didn't waste 45 minutes of my time. it's again bread and circus.
Well, I don't have an easy segue into this, so let's table the community talk and talk about the games themselves, because there's a lot of video games, you guys. I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot, and it almost feels like it's impossible to play everything you want, even in a single year, because between the massive AAA and quadruple A launches and all of the new indie games coming up. I joked about it at the top of the show. We barely have time to finish any video games nowadays.
Not Matt.
And last time...
Matt's a freaking beast, dude.
It helps to pad the list with a ton of games that are 2 hours or less. Makes it look more impressive.
But last time we talked about our emotional connections and nostalgia with a lot of video games. But when there is so many games coming out every week, do you think people are often too quick to move on? Like, are there just too many games releasing these days for people to actually just sit there and let them, sink in?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean. I mean, I think for everyone on this call, we all create some semblance of content around games, whether it's new games or old games. And so that's part of it, right? If we're recording podcasts about a game we love, like we get to mull it over, maybe talk to a friend. I mean, I know I can only speak to my personal experience that I definitely move on too quick sometimes. Like, I throw a blurb up on the internet, I chat with some folks in a Discord, and then move on to the next thing. Part of that is in service of a podcast that tries to stay current somewhat, even though the topics are broader. Like, we still do a top 10 of the year. We still do interviews. A lot of it is moving on from indie to indie. And actually this year, something that kind of pushed that further is I took it upon myself to try and write a written review every month all year long for the Fun and Games Patreon. It's free for everyone to read. It was a reason to use some of the codes I was getting and also to flex that muscle because I used to write regularly. And so I've played even more games because besides whatever else I was playing for fun or for podcast, I was also playing one game a month, usually an indie game, to write about. And so I definitely felt like I was churning through things faster. But I don't think I appreciate them any less. But I definitely don't dwell on them as much. I think games like Expedition 33 sat with me because of the narrative. And while I won't spoil anything for those who have yet to play it, it's a heavy narrative. There is a lot of sad and mournful moments that happen in that game. And I think that is easier to sit with me because we've talked about the emotionality than something arcadey I played that was fun. Like, say, Dunkadillo is this platforming game where you're an armadillo who turns into a basketball. There are like, I think 6 worlds in the game and multiple levels in each world. It was a blast. I loved it. Have I really thought that much about it since I finished it? No. The soundtrack's catchy, but like it was more arcadey, and so there was less to dwell on. I don't know that that's a fault. Well, actually, yes. I think it's completely a fault of how many games are coming out every year. I think it's. Go ahead, Keith.
I was going to say, I think what I'm getting at is, I think the real question is with all of these games coming out constantly, how do you think that affects any one game's staying power or the ability for people to ultimately remember it by the time Game of the Year rolls around?
No. I mean, time is a big part of that. Like, the year Hi-Fi Rush came out, it was one of my favorite games I played all year. By the end of the year, no one was really talking about it. I mean, I also ended up not making my game of the year. I think that year was Alan Wake 2, which came out towards the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, it definitely in the in the major arm of the industry, the Keeleys, if you will, which is what a lot of this revolved around, I think that is definitely a problem too, is like if 500 games have come out from January to November, which feels low, actually, it's probably more. It's so easy for stuff to disappear. I mean, there are games that were mentioned in the Indie Game Awards nominee announcement that I totally forgot came out this year. And I was looking forward to that game earlier this year, right? I think there is definitely too many games, but what a blessing also, right? There's a game for everybody at this point. But it does dilute the meaningfulness of like, well, this one game's the best game of the year. Well, did you play all 900 games that came out in the last 3 months? So how do you know that's the best game that came out this year? It's the best game you played this year. Different thing. And I would agree with that. I think it's definitely leading towards that.
I think that it impacts people in so much as the new shiny object might cause them to give up on a game early that otherwise might have really stuck with them. Because a lot of games aren't perfect, right? They might have some rough edges. They might have some pacing issues that could still be really, really good. But it's like, oh, I got this game on Steam. I can refund it as long as I play it under 2 hours and just get the next thing. Or like you said, there's so many games. But I think that would be my guess is the main driver personally, because like I'm playing a game right now that no one's talking about that came out 2 days ago, and it might be my game of the year if I beat it before the end of the year. It's a little indie game from they did a Hyperlight Drifter in Solar Ash. It's their new game called Possessors. It's just like another Metroidvania, one out of a trillion Metroidvanias. But all the noise doesn't stop me from finding the games that I'm interested in and then really, really enjoying them. Except for sometimes I'll give up on a game early because there's so many options. And then I'll go back and maybe someone else, you should try that again. You should try. Like, for example, I tried Dragon Age. I messaged Matt about it. I love the whole series. We talked on Instagram a little, and I gave it like 4 or 5 hours. It just wasn't for me. And there were so many other games that maybe if I had no other games to play, I would have stuck that out for 5 more hours and it would have clicked. And then it would have been a great game for me. But when you have so little time and so many options, I think personally it can ruin the chances you really love a game. And then in terms of the Keeley and the industry, it's like in the fighting, you're only as good as your last fight in the UFC. Like you could have 1 million fights and you get beat up one fight. Everyone thinks you're a washed up loser. It's like, wait a minute. This dude lost one time in like 15 years and you think he's a pussy now. Like what? There's a little bit of that going on in the Game Awards, which is cool that Expedition 33 is stayed top of mind, even though it came out early, because it doesn't happen that way. So I do think that it can impact a game's chances just because if it comes out early in the year and then other big games come and they're more at the top of mind in the cycle, then I think that would increase their chance of winning the Game of the Year. But it's not always the case. Like it doesn't seem like it's the case this year. So that's maybe like a half and half issue.
It's hard to say because, again, like Matt said, I'm glad that there's a game for everyone. Everyone's getting their chance to make their art. Everyone's getting their chance to have their voice be heard. Everyone of every community out there is really getting a chance to have their day, and I'm glad for them. Not everything's going to be my cup of tea. It's not supposed to be. That's cool. Not my problem. But, even myself, looking at the wealth of games I have played this year, tried this year, it's hard. I know I mentioned a while ago off mic, there's a couple games I had questions about. I was excited for them. They disappeared off everyone's radar. Has anyone heard anything? We'll take Dragon Age. We talked about it last year. It came out 1 month this year on PlayStation's Essential program for free. I picked up Veilguard. I played for an hour. I realized that apparently I should have played Inquisition because I'm completely lost, and I put it down. Maybe I'll get back to it someday, but the same problem is what I did to myself is I also picked up Baldur's Gate 3 this year and began playing it. And while it is a great Larian game, I know what they did. I have a ton of problems with it, which I will eventually talk about on my own show. for a lot of reasons, and some of them are going to be stupid, some of them are going to be big. This year has been terrible. I feel like I have gaming ADHD, the worst I've ever had in my life. Is it because there's too many? Is the selection too big? Is my eyes too big for my digital plate? Maybe. Maybe I did this to myself, but it's hard for me to come up with the game of year now, even personally, because I'm all over the board.
I also think there's a good subsection of gaming culture in which people are obsessed with backlogs. A friend of the show, of course, Dave, literally has a podcast called Tales of the Backlog. And so I think that's also very much another kind of a stick in the spokes here, as far as like, well, now not only is there hundreds of games releasing in any given month, but I also have a bunch of games that I have to catch up with from last year, maybe possibly play the game of the year that year. And it is feeling increasingly impossible to actually like maybe even find a game that I think on a personal level would be a game of the year, let alone having to go out and play, the game that is currently trending right now in everybody's minds. One of the things that I thought of when this episode was coming up was about our discussion about other award shows. And when it came to like the other types of media, like books and television and movies and music, in which those other art forms are also somewhat representative of the time in which they came out in. And video games can sometimes be that. Sometimes they're not. And so keeping within the topic of just the video games themselves, should game of the year like represent specifically technical excellence, artistic risk, or should it be culturally relevant? Or should it be all three?
I would say that it's a mix for sure, because I don't think that any one of those categories defines wholly what it means to be a video game. All of those things work in concert to create the experience that we know as a video game, whether it's technical mastery, whether it's music, gameplay, art direction, coding, all that stuff kind of works together. And to kind of separate them out and sit and elevate and say like one is more important than the other, I don't necessarily agree with, because I think without one of those things, then that thing ceases to be a video game, because video games are kind of like modern miracles of technology. The general internet buzz takes for granted the vast amount of work and resources and how finicky it is to make a functioning video game and put that product out the door. And as they become better and better looking, they become more and more complicated to do so. So I wouldn't say that any one thing would exemplify what it means to be a game of the year. For me personally, it has to be a mixture of all of those things working together to create this experience that had some kind of emotional connection or stuck with me. I mean, you guys all talked about playing different games and having experiences that lasted. And I think there are several different things happening in that soup that affect kind of how long we talk about things. And certainly the content machine is one of those things. A lot of us play video games to talk about them, to create our content. And then it's on to the next thing, because yes, we do have to make more content, because that is just the nature of the algorithm. It is a unending beast, and it must be fed, right? I think the nature of the way we consume content as well, when it's chopped up into things like short video and social media and stuff like that, has kind of, and I've especially noticed it myself, and I've taken steps to correct this, it's definitely dulled our attention spans. And not saying any of you specifically here, but in general, it's definitely dulled our attention spans to not be able to focus on something for longer than a little bit and ready to move on to the next thing, whether you're swiping up, swiping right, try and get a date, or it's a video game. I've tried very hard to make a conscious effort this year to sit with things a little bit longer. My Expedition episode came out 6 months after everybody else's. I'm still writing a Silk Song episode. That game's been out for 2 months and everybody's already moved on to like Dispatch. Everybody moved off Expedition 33 and talked about Death Stranding 2 and Donkey Kong. And so it's just a constant pressure to like move on. But I also think that we have to realize, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of blending the two questions because I didn't get a chance to talk about the last one. We have to realize too that the people that do those sort of things, scratch that, I'm going to go back to my other point first. And there are these things that incentivize us to do these kind of things, to consume a lot of the stuff and move on, right? We have things like Letterboxd and Goodreads, and I'm on backlog, so I track every single game that I play and put it in a list. Like you said, the listification of content, right? And it feels cool to do that. And you can like go back and see, oh, on this date, I watched this movie or read this book, and this is what I thought about it. Like all that stuff is very cool. But to me, I'm just like, oh, it's really cool to see. Like I've played like 500 games over my lifetime. So there's that, like the apps give us that incentive to like track all these things and to play more things. And so you can be like, oh, I have this wider breadth of experience of all these things I've consumed. Right. So I wouldn't say it's a problem with there's too many video games. It's really cool that there are like 2,000 games that come out on Steam every year. Are some of them waifu gacha games? Maybe. Do those have value to some people? Sure. I would say that, you know, Keith enjoys a good waifu game from time to time. Who's to say that that can't be part of the Game of the Year conversation? What was the second question? I'm bringing it back around now that you asked.
It was, dude, what matters more? Technical, emotional?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So just to bring it back all around. Yeah, I don't know. I'll end it at that. I'll pass it off to somebody else. I made my point.
Yeah, my question was, should technical excellence, artistic risk, or like cultural relevance, like a game representing the year that it came out in, should those be regarded as far as nominating a game of the year?
I think it's a mix for sure. And I definitely think there is one example specifically when I read that question, and then I'll pass it off to somebody else, that exemplifies the specific time frame that it came out in. And that is 2016 when Overwatch won Game of the Year. Because playing Overwatch now, nobody would say that. Everyone would probably be like, well, why is this Game of the Year? It's the same kind of shooter that everything else is. But at the time, that was revolutionary. It was mind-blowing when Overwatch came out. So I think in that specific instance, it is kind of like a time capsule of the period, but that also had components of technical excellence and great fun gameplay and awesome music and all that other stuff tied into it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back to the personal connection, right? Which is, I think, where I'm most comfortable is like, for me, that changes every year, right? Like, if Clair Obscur Expedition 33, again, too many words, becomes my game of the year this year, which it may not be. There's another game, Fretless, that I love that was also an RPG, that was also an indie game, that was a music rhythm-based RPG. Like, I think for me, so for example, Expedition 33, really high emotional connection, really resonated with the story. Also really liked it mechanically, but didn't love the parry system as much as other people. So like it's a mixed bag there. Whereas like Fretless has a good story, but that's not why I loved that game. I loved that game because all of the turn-based battle mechanics were a mix of a card game and a rhythm game. And I loved the mechanics. And the music was incredible, obviously. It was a rhythm game. It basically had to be by design. And so even within my own favorites of this year, one I love for the emotional, impactful storytelling, one I love for the mechanical, and then one I love for the soundtrack. Like, you know, I mentioned Dunkadillo earlier this year, which is by Thomas K. Young. He's a solo developer, he's done tons of stuff. Like, that game, to most people, doesn't exist, but to me, I really liked it because mechanically it was fun to play. The story was basically non-existent. The graphics were pretty. Like, I think it ebbs and flows, and I think that's the case also for the game of the year at the Keeleys, like Eric was talking about. I mean, think about the year that Baldur's Gate 3 won. It was a big deal for a lot of reasons, but part of it was Larian was a studio that maybe 5 years earlier, no one had heard of. I don't mean no one, but like it was big in the indie scene, but like not a single person who plays AAA games knew what Divinity was on that same scale that everyone knows what Baldur's Gate 3 is, right? And that changed the trajectory of that studio, changed the trajectory of games. And that game was a technical masterpiece. The amount of choices, voice acting, and content in that game is still astonishing. And so I don't think there's a correct answer. I do think it's all of the above, and the mainstream award show shows us that, as well as kind of people's personal lists.
I'll just say for myself, I'll try to keep this quick. I think, again, it is a mix of things. I personally am getting a little tired of the everything has to look ultra realistic all the time. Do I really need to see every sweaty pore on every character's face ever? No, I really don't. I'm beginning to sit here and go, maybe I'll need to see a dermatologist because it's getting a little ridiculous here. I personally like having a mix of art styles because to me, that's what speaks a lot. It's not just the emotional impact of a story, and I'm all for the emotional impact of a story. I'm great for that. I know a lot of games are there for pushing forward the technology, being that next technical marvel that drives the industry towards its next heightened level of whatever the hell. And I know that not everyone goes for that. That's perfectly fine. There's a lot of games I played this year that are much lower poly experiences, and they were fantastic. I also like a game where I can tell, like, from art style to art style to art style to art style, I can tell them apart. After a while, it just becomes the same thing when it's the same bland, homogenized characters over and over again, no matter what kind of character sliders you have going on, no matter if it's an elf, a human, a dwarf, an alien, don't give a shit.
Doki Doki Literature Club.
It's all becoming homogenized. And I feel it takes away from the artistry and the individuality. But at the same time, it's kind of what people like. It gets the butts in the seats. It gets people in the door. Does this thing look like me? Can I make it look like me? Sure, everyone loves their own representation. I'm just wondering, can we have a little variety within the technical aspects, the art styles, and then go on to the story and all the other bits? But again, that's just me coming in from that particular angle.
I think, too, if Kade's still thinking, I can piggyback off of what Phil said, and with this kind of asterisk, I too look for things that have more variety and kind of look different and kind of have like a wider breadth of experience. But when a study comes out that showed that 50% of people bought 2 or less games last year, I do kind of got to give myself a reality check and be like, hey, we are in the minority of people who play and consume games, and we try to play as much as we can, have the widest breadth of experiences possible. Like, we really are. My life's been really busy this year. I played 53 games last year. I don't even think I've played 15 this year. And I'm probably still in the upper, like, 90th percentile of people who have played games this year, because over half people, just their experience is what Phil described. It's kind of that, what the AAA modern high fidelity graphics game has come to look like. So that when people see those things and they identify them and they go, oh yeah, like that's what a video game should look like. That's what a video game is. That's the video game that I play. That's their only lens of experience. Cause that's the only thing they play. They pick up the Madden or the Call of Duty or the really cool, like God of War Ragnarok, and they play Fortnite with their friends. And like, that's their lens of experience. Whereas like we're over here trying to have a different lens of experience. So I do try to like keep that front of mind and be like, that is what people's experiences are. And obviously people buy those things because that's why they keep making them that way. So just to piggyback off what Phil said.
Kate, I didn't know if I thought you were going to mention something.
Everything else I'm going to say has been said. I agree with everybody. It's a mix. Okay. I got nothing unique to say.
I do want to, so this thought came up as Phil was kind of talking about like the variety in games and I played Silent Hill F this year, and I'm so torn on that game because it's a good game. It is a good game. It just smells of, I feel like, corporate made decisions, especially when it comes to a lot of the way that game plays. And I could tell what that game was going to play like the first hour in, and then after about 5 hours of playing it, I was like, I think I've kind of had enough of this. And so where I'm going with this is that, do you think, and this is more of like a personal question, I guess I'll aim this towards you, Phil. Are you more impressed by games that refine a formula or ones that break it?
I live and I teach by this context when it comes to this sort of thing. You need to know what the rules are before you can break them. The idea I always live by is that I want to see people who are willing to break the rules, but know what the technical mastery behind the reason why they're doing what they're doing. So they're not just doing something to do it. I just want to be the first new thing out there. And you're taking a shot in the dark, whether it's good or bad. I prefer seeing people who it's very obvious that they know what their skills are before they go ahead and change the rules, change the formula, change the game. I talk about it this way. Look at the work of Pablo Picasso. Picasso knows how to draw, always did, knows exactly how to draw and paint. His technical skill and ability in mastery of the human form, mastery of color are always there. They're always fantastic. He just wanted to do something different, and that's therefore he went through and invented the concept of cubism, taking a look at something from multiple angles all at once and then filtering that through a lens of art. Do I personally agree with that? No, I think it was groundbreaking for its time. I feel it's a little played out now. That doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean he didn't do anything unusual. What he did was he knew what the rules were, he knew what the stakes were, and then he decided to say, the hell with this, I'm going to do something different because I think something different needs to be said. Games, I feel, should be done with a similar idea. I want games from teams that not only know what they're doing. It's obvious from the developer to the writer to the artist to the coding people can obviously put together a good product, but are willing to stand out, break code, and do something a little bit different. This is not going to work for everybody. Obviously, they want money. It's a job. If they want to keep their job, they have to keep their patrons happy. That's the
Doki Doki Literature Club
thing about being an artist, and it always has been, is that you are very much dependent on money people who don't know what you do professionally and think you're literally creating witchcraft to pay you. It's like any other job. You don't spend all your time, if you want to make $1 million, you don't spend all your time learning everything about an industry. You learn enough so that you can hire specialists in partial fields, pay them a certain amount, and then rake in the profits. In a game, it's kind of the same way. You don't do everything at once unless you are truly that talented, where you are a polymath and can do everything at once. You get to know enough how to do it, and then bring on the people who are really good at certain things. You build a team, and then you say, here's the stakes. What can we do different?
I think those things, I agree with what Phil said. I think those things can be separated into two distinct categories. I think it depends on the objective of what you're trying to complete. I don't think refinement in the way that traditional sequelization is done is necessarily a bad thing. And my big game this year that I point to for that argument is Hollow Knight Silksong. If you've played Silksong and played the original Hollow Knight, Silksong isn't terribly different. I mean, it's pretty much got all the same kind of bells and whistles on it. It looks the same. It presents the same. You know it's a Hollow Knight game. Sure, there are different ways that Hornet plays. She has some additional tools in her kit to alter the way you play, and she moves a little bit faster than the Knight. But it is largely a refinement of the Hollow Knight. The game that the formula that made the first Hollow Knight so successful, and Team Cherry obviously saw that, sold 15 million copies of Hollow Knight, and they're like, why should we completely reinvent the wheel? Let's just make this wheel a little bit better. And it created a fantastic game, I think. And I think that that's totally fine if you have something that works and you just want to refine it and put out something that's maybe a little bit better of that version. And not all sequels are inherently better than their original. Sometimes they're not. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that we do need more people that try to break boundaries and push the industry forward, because that's the only way we get better and better experiences by doing that. But I think there's room for both, and not everybody's going to set out to make something that is a refiner or set out to make something that is a breakthrough game, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I do think there's obviously a lot of very creative and talented people in the indie scene that are very much doing what they can to kind of break through and doing some very interesting things. And it feels like a lot of the ideas that come from the indie scene are eventually lifted by the larger companies and then they just repeat that formula ad nauseum, which again, to your point, Eric, is fine to some point because they are also trying to refine that formula. I mean, look at how many Hades clones have come out since Hades came out, so I want to shift the conversation here to platforms, because we did kind of bring it up at the top of the episode, and I did want to make a point to hit it again. Looking at the list of games that were nominated and that have won over the past decade, 4 console exclusive games have won Game of the Year. 3 of them were from Sony. 1 of them was from Nintendo. And in 2020 alone, the nominees included 3 Sony exclusives and 1 from Nintendo, which meant that only 2 multi-platform titles ever made the list. And now I'm remembering we were talking about Ghost of GOTY, and Matt was kind of surprised that was my pick for what I think is going to win Game of the Year. And I think right there, I mean, Sony seems to almost be shoving a lot of money. I'm saying this, okay? I'm not saying everybody believes this, but Sony's in them pockets. So, especially when you consider Astrobot won last year too. Anyway, so for an industry that is kind of being like, hey, we're more accessible than ever. Come play these games however you want. They're available. Here they are. It definitely seems like exclusivity.
Gotcha.
Podcasting.
Gotcha.
I am. Yes, I'm a real podcaster. I talk for a living. I don't do this for a living. I'm lying. It definitely still dominates kind of the spotlight here. Is this a coincidence, or do you think there is a built-in bias towards like these prestigious PlayStation and I guess Nintendo titles? We're leaving Xbox out of it, I guess, because they're not really doing anything.
I think it's funny. I've never felt more like exclusivity was dead than I have lately, but to that end, it does still exist, right? The reason I was surprised that you mentioned Ghost of GOTY is because that is a game that I bought and I've played some of and really liked and still continue to forget exists as soon as I put it down. And that's no fault of the game. Part of it is that I'm just tired of open world games, but like, because I love Eric Ishii, I think they're an incredible performer. I think they do a great job with that game. It looks stunning, all of that stuff, right? But is what Phil was talking about earlier. I like art direction. Not that those games don't have it, but like Fretless is a pixel art game, right? Clair Obscur has these fanciful worlds with characters like Monoko and Eskie that look nothing like any other human character. And so they stand out. But like, you're right, Keith. There is this level of exclusivity that like all of these console creators and these publishers think that we need this title to sell this system. And like Nintendo sort of did that this year. Like we did get the Switch 2 this year, which I haven't mentioned yet. And their flagship title was Mario Kart World, which, smart, right? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is one of the best-selling video games ever, full stop. But still, I was less stoked because I like Mario Kart, but like I would have wanted Donkey Kong to be the launch title. Now I've unfortunately fallen off that game too and didn't see that one through to the end. Like, it just... like my hit for Nintendo this year was Pokemon Legends ZA, which most people don't like, and I loved. So like, I think the exclusivity sort of matters, but like when you think about the Nintendo title that won, it was Breath of the Wild, right? That was less that it was an exclusive title and more that Breath of the Wild did something with Zelda that had never been done before on that scale. Other games had done open world like that, but not like Zelda. It was a unique thing. You think about Astrobot winning, right? The funniest thing about Astrobot is the antithesis of the Sony business model. They've been investing all of that money in all of those realistic Last of Us, Ghost of GOTY style, God of War style games that look hyper realistic, and then the cute little robot game wins because people wanted a cute little robot platformer, right? I think I think you're not wrong that exclusivity seems to dominate those categories, but I do feel like it's more coincidence because of the amount of money pumped into exclusivity because these companies still think it matters. Look, I don't have a lot of credit to give Xbox. They've basically been terrible across the board, business decisions, what they've released. But like trying to hold on to stuff like Indiana Jones and Keeper with Double Fine this year. This is a year where a Double Fine game came out, a brand new Double Fine game, and nobody talked about it. I, who loves Double Fine, has still not played it, barely talked about it, right? Like, I think that the exclusivity need is a myth, but the companies haven't gotten that memo yet. And that's why we see it fall out the way it does in these award shows, because they're still pushing for it. Halo is going multi-platform next year. That's just the campaign. It's not the multiplayer, fine. But like the exclusive title that was left, the only one left now is Mario, right? Mario is like the pinnacle of exclusivity. And that was on iPhones a few years ago, right? Like, I think it's the companies pushing them, and that bleeds into the awards, not the other way around.
I was going to say, I think I hate to keep coming back to marketing, but it's what I know. Exclusivity is marketing, and PlayStation and Sony did a really, really good job of convincing everybody that the games they were putting out were peak video games. And it is all to do with that run that they had in the mid 2010s where it was God of War and it was Horizon Zero Dawn and all those games like Ghost of Tsushima, all those games that came out. And that was the argument, right? Is like PlayStation is putting out these like generational games, like that's where you need to be. And I think that's part of why they would clean up so well at the Game Awards, because it's marketing, and you want to have a selling point as to why you should buy our box instead of the competitor's box. Like Matt said, Halo and Gears are on PlayStation. It's gone. It's over. The only place exclusivity matters now is Nintendo. That is it. Because they continue to believe that their experiences can only be had on their machines and their devices. And they're pretty much right. We just got...
No. I was playing Mario 64 RTX render 96 mods that look just like the promotional material, ray trace lighting, Mega Man. That's what I was gonna say. I'm playing Zero in Mario 64.
Mega Man in Mario 64.
Of the profit.
No, but I think you're right. I do want to piggyback on that. I think the Steam box is going to eat away at the last little bit of exclusivity that Nintendo has. I agree with you guys. There's a Super Mario 3D Deluxe is a fan-made, like pre-installed remaster of all the Mario games. It's like 3 clicks, you're up and running. And that's going to be available on a Steam box. Like you just go click the button and you're going to be able to play all these first-party games better, with better quality of life and better features that people would want on the Switch and the Switch 2. And I think that Nintendo's either going to have to step up their game. I've heard all of us in various podcasts kind of crack jokes at Nintendo's expense about how they milk us for money, but we also love all of their IPs. So we're like, fine, just do it. We don't care. I don't know. I wonder if that's going to fade a little bit, because I do agree exclusivity is essentially gone minus them. And I wonder how that's going to play out when something like the Steam box can make playing Mario 64 with RTX lighting instead of, it took me like an hour and a half to get that working last night. What happens when it's 3 clicks in 5 minutes?
I think that's, again, exclusivity and Nintendo kind of being the last bastion of it. My thought on this is because Nintendo doesn't give a shit what's going on with Steam or Microsoft. They're foreign entities. Sony's right down the road from them at home. That's their direct competitor as far as keeping exclusive, and that would be the only thing that they can do. Now, will that have to change? I mean, it might. PlayStation's going online. Xbox is mostly toasted. I mean, they're literally waiting on, they had, as you guys said, Gears and Halo, which are going to PlayStation. Every single person I have heard talking about Xbox, they don't talk about Xbox. They turn to Bethesda and go, save us, and then turn back to the camera. And Nintendo is just being Nintendo. It's just doing its thing because it's looking down the road at Sony going,
Now it's the big one. GOTY.
yes, I don't care. I'll do the accent. People can hate me.
Doki Doki Literature Club.
But that's really kind of more, it would be as if I were to then say the argument and turn around like here between Microsoft and Valve. Now they have a legitimate beef to be with one another and be worried because they're on their home territory. They're here. They're not really going to probably worry too much about Nintendo because, again, they're very far away. They're in a different country. It's a different issue. They can be as exclusive as they want. They're not worried about them. They're worried about the guy next door.
Hey folks, before we get back to the episode, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about how you can support the main quest. The show's Patreon is the best way to keep this thing going. And when you subscribe, you'll get access to bonus episodes, early access to regular content, and exclusive side shows that you can't get anywhere else. What was that? Anyway, Patreon support helps me cover hosting costs, equipment, and gives me more time to do deeper dives into the games that you love.
Zero mercy.
Okay. Yeah, so you'll even receive bonus written reviews about games that I'm playing outside of the program, and
This message is brought to you by Hell Piss Zero Mercy, the only energy drink that inflicts poison, berserk, and permanent haste.
right. You know, I didn't sign off on that. That's not real. Just ignore those.
Now available in Red Ring Riptide. Only at participating cursed Patreon feeds.
I don't even know what that means. There is no energy drink. Listen, I promise, the Patreon, it's just normal podcast content. Nothing will poison you. Or whatever. Maybe.
Hell Piss. Unleash the chaos. Or forever live at 15 FPS.
Just check the show notes for the Patreon link. And thank you. And I guess drink responsibly. But not that. Don't drink that. Let me steer this, because we're talking about Nintendo a lot. Let me steer this back towards developers, because you have the third-party developers, you know, like your Konamis and your Capcoms, and even indie developers like your Team Cherries or Supergiant. Are those developers? You would think it would make sense that they are incentivized to go multi-platform because it broadens their reach of who can actually play their game. But to get that, you know, big bad game of the year nomination, you know, judging from the quick research I just did, maybe they should be chasing that prestige awards nomination that comes with exclusivity. I still can't say that word.
Exclusivity.
Exclusive. Yeah. Thank you.
That word. Well, but yeah, see, there's a different part to that, though. As someone who spent a lot of time talking to those indie devs on the show floor and begging their game to come to Switch, because that's my preferred platform, a lot of them go, well, we'll start with Steam and then go from there. That's less about exclusivity and more about infrastructure. It's just easier to develop for the PC. It's easier to develop for Steam. For consoles, it's much harder. And also part of it, I think, is that porting stuff is not easy and costs money. And so starting with PC and Steam has the largest install base still than anything else. And then going to those other places as it works. And in the places that they have had that exclusivity, can still say it, it's not going to last forever. That doesn't work out. Think about Cuphead, right? Cuphead was exclusive to Xbox because they helped them publish it and then eventually went multi-platform. There was, I don't know, a couple months maybe. It didn't help them. They didn't sell more when they were exclusive on Game Pass. And the whole Game Pass conversation, put aside the fact that they doubled the cost of Game Pass last month, literally doubled it. And we're like, yeah, it's good. People still buy it. Whole other can of worms. But indie studios have come forward saying, yeah, being exclusive on Game Pass hasn't helped the game. That exclusivity hasn't helped sell the game. It doesn't help get us in it doesn't move the needle the same way. Being on Steam, being in Steam Next Fest, that level of exclusivity, quote unquote, being available on Steam feels more powerful these days because I've heard of more, especially with the indie games, I've heard of more games via Steam Next Fest, via creators like us covering Steam Next Fest, talking about those games than I ever hear console stuff, right? I think the indie landscape is always going to be tied to PC first and then other consoles second.
And also, being Epic Games exclusive didn't help Alan Wake 2.
Yep.
I think that's another great. Actually, I heard it a lot.
Yeah,
and it's a great game. That's not even an indie game. That's a big game with a big marketing budget, and so there's exclusive consoles, and there's also this exclusivity when it comes to these PC platforms. People trying to take away Steam market share, which just hasn't. I mean, to be fair, Epic did pay for a lot of Alan Wake 2's development, so I mean, I guess there's a trade-off there. But the game barely broke even. I think this year I saw a headline, it broke even this year, even with them paying for that. So that's why I was really stoked for the Valve box and the controller. I just think that I don't think exclusivity helps anymore, I guess. It used to drive, I think the competition would drive innovation. But it doesn't seem to be working that way anymore. It just seems to be a way to pay money, keep my game on your system, but wink, wink, we're going to put it out on everything eventually, but we're just going to pay for you to keep it on our system for a year. I'm not buying Ghost of Yotei. Why would I buy it? I'm waiting for the better version to come out on PC. There's a million games to play. So I'll just wait.
I mean, part of that, I think, is also the console innovation has dried up, right? Now it's just what box can run the most powerful thing. Look, I love the Switch 2. I think the Switch is my favorite platform ever because it took my love of handheld gaming and also made it a home console on the TV. By far, the Switch 2 is the platform I use the most now that I have it, the Switch before that. That said, when we left the Wii and when we left the Wii U, and we left dedicated handhelds like the 3DS, we also left what makes Nintendo. They're now just another platform chasing graphics, chasing exclusivity. The innovation of those consoles, hit or miss, didn't always love waggling a Wiimote, but those things made them unique. I not that long ago did a retrospective on the 3DS. That console was bizarrish.
Visceral dismemberment.
But there were so many great games on it because they were dedicated to that platform. Whereas now, if it's coming out on Switch, it's the same in handheld or on the TV, besides FPS or whatever, but it's the same game. Witcher 3 on the Switch is the same game at its core as it is on PlayStation or Xbox. It may not look as good, but that's it, right? And that's kind of the bummer, and I think also why exclusivity is less important, because now all three major players are just chasing the latest and greatest. And again, I caveat with that saying I love the Switch. I don't want a different kind of Nintendo console. I want them to stay in this market, but we lost something. And so to Kate's point also, I really think no one's doing motion controls anymore. No one's doing the Kinect. Nobody cares. They want to chase the best graphics, the most powerful, the most frames per second, all of that stuff. And I think that's also slowly killing the exclusivity because everyone's in line to just try and sell the next best thing.
And most of the controls have been kind of unified, right? So it's like when you make an indie game, if you want the highest install base and the highest potential to make the most money, where you're going to You're going to build it around a standard control scheme, a standard controller, which everybody supports now, including Nintendo. And you're going to I'm going to make the same game and just port it and make it work on all these different platforms versus when exclusivity was a bigger thing. We're going to do something for the Wii that you can only do on the Wii with the Wii remote. And yeah, with the loss of that, that's just a good point. Like it feels less and less important. Like it's whatever your preferred platform is, the game's going to be the same. And most games are going to be on it. There's a few Sony games that still haven't gone to PC, and you have Nintendo. And I think in 5 years from now, it's funny, I was thinking the other night, I wonder if we're going to see Nintendo games on PC in the next 5 to 10 years. Or are they just going to hold out? I don't know the answer to that.
It feels more believable now. It wouldn't have felt believable 10 years ago. It feels more believable now. What I need Xbox and Nintendo to do is have a meeting and get in line with the XAYB thing. Like, let's unify that already. Too confusing. I've had enough. And then Sony, it's a cross, not an X. Get the hell out of here. It's an X. What are you talking about?
Nintendo's path of innovation has dried up. The only place they have left to innovate is their software. That's it. They have to make games that are innovative. That's it. Because the Switch 2 was innovative when it came out, but everybody has that now. There's the Steam Deck. There's the ROG Ally. The Xbox is combined with that now. So there's the Portal for PlayStation, which isn't like it's a streaming handheld. So it's still the same concept. So that hardware innovation is really the last thing we've seen Nintendo do in the last 10 years. I would argue too that Nintendo's creativity on that front, Nintendo's messaging specifically has felt very more corporate and sterilized in how all the lawsuits they're going through to attack people since we lost Iwata and since Reggie retired. I don't know if there's a line in there, but I'm just throwing that out there.
So what I'm hearing is that there isn't a lot of weight to as far as the game of the year goes, is that there's not a lot of weight behind the PlayStation name or the Nintendo name as these nominees would.
I would agree with Matt. I think it's more coincidence. It feels like it's more coincidence.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We don't know the nominees as of this recording. We don't even know the nominees this time around. So, as we're recording this, they will be announced the next day. So, we'll see how many PlayStation games are on there. I don't even know how many PlayStation games were released this year. Godfall turned 5 this year.
Oh man, amazing!
Shout out to Godfall.
Shout out to Godfall.
Hell yeah! Last year, there was a lot of huge debate over one of the Game of the Year nominees, and that was Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erd Tree. And we are basically living in the age of the ongoing games. Stuff like Fortnite and No Man's Sky, Destiny, and games that are like these ideas that just these games that never end, right? And despite having huge followings and kind of having like their own subcategory, which for whatever reason exclusives do not have their own subcategory in the game awards. These games, live service games, they're never really considered for the Game of the Year nomination. And also within the past decade, only 3 have been nominated, which were PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in 2017. Eric mentioned Overwatch in 2016, and then Monster Hunter World in 2018. Only one of those won, and that was Overwatch. Meanwhile, you've got these single-player games that are basically, for lack of a better word, complete games, and they dominate the Game of the Year category year after year. Even when you consider Shadow of the Erd Tree, which isn't technically a complete game, which was why there was such a big debate over it, right? So what do you think it is about live service games and ongoing games, and even games that aren't technically complete upon release? And I'm using complete quotations for complete here. Why do you think these are mostly ignored when Game of the Year rolls around?
I mean, it's the same reason the industry is ignoring them. They aren't innovating. Overwatch won that year, like Eric said, because there was nothing like it. It defined the hero shooter, which is now an overused term. Like Marvel Rivals, I think came out the end of last year, which is basically, to simplify, Overwatch with Marvel characters, though I actually really enjoy the game. So I don't think it was nominated last year. It's so long ago now that it's unlikely to be nominated this year, though it could be. I just don't think they're doing anything interesting in that space. Like, look, people want to rag on Concord, and there's stuff to rag on, but I feel terrible for that team. Whether it was their idea or they were roped into making that game, they made the game, it came out for a week, was canceled, and then they all got fired. It's just demoralizing. I think the reason those games don't get nominated is because they're not good or they haven't done anything interesting. Like, Suicide Squad had a lot of problems. It still had the great storytelling that team does well, but mired under live service nonsense, right? Everyone wants to be Fortnite. I think Fortnite won something. It's probably one ongoing game at one point. But like, you're not going to touch Fortnite or Roblox or games like that have this huge install base. It's just not possible, but people seem to still like. I mean, World of Warcraft can't even compete anymore. It's still around and still making expansions, and it gets nominated from time to time for like ongoing game and stuff. But like, the only person who's really constantly taking a chunk out of that pie, and it's because it's a different kind of game, because it's basically a single player story, is Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Wilds. Those games have been in the conversation because they are narrative games that have ongoing elements. They're not competitive online games, live service games. Destiny 2 also in the conversation a lot, but not winning anything. I think the quality of those games aren't getting them nominated. I don't think there's anything wrong with live service games as a concept. I've played my fair share of them. I just don't think anyone's doing anything that interesting with them right now.
Mm-hmm. I guess I should rephrase it just a little bit, because I'm also clumping in.
I was going to ask for clarification. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of clumping in also games that aren't, again, quote unquote, finished, that are released when you know there's DLC coming. And I mean, like, should those even be considered for Game of the Year at all when you know there's going to be, I guess, supplemental stuff coming to that game?
Do we need to? I mean, should we have a DLC of the year category? Should we have a mod of the year category? Should we have a remake of the year category? That would cut the heart out of a lot of the top 5 right away. My thing is, this is just my thought on it. We know most games coming out these days, with the exception of a rare few, are going to have some level of ongoing content. The cow is there. We've purchased it. Let's milk the poor thing for all it's worth. My thing is, like, are they trying to give the public a new experience? Because it feels like the public always wants the same thing but new. They want a new thing, but does it look like something like the old thing? Like I said, if that doesn't make sense, I'll clarify. But I feel like they're saying we should be giving the public a new experience, yet we're going to build off the bones of the same. Everything's derivative. We have no choice. But at the same time, we have to prepare for, we don't want to make a complete game anymore, because once those sales end, there's that revenue loss. We need to prepare for content being cut and repackaged and resold. We need to prepare for, hey, this ended up being a smash hit. We need to get the team back together and build something in a hurry so we can continue to capitalize on it. I don't know if it's a developer thing. I assume it's more of a corporatized thing. But should we maybe include that? Maybe say incomplete game of the year, check back in 6 months.
Yeah, this is interesting, because it's got me thinking about this. I think first there's a distinction between experiences that maybe have a continuing element but have like standalone DLC that come out, and pure live service games that have like the seasonal model where it's like every 3 months we're resetting this. We want you to buy the new battle pass thing, or there's new waves of all this stuff. I think those types of games should have their opportunity in the year they come out to be game of the year, but then they do belong in that ongoing game category after that. So that would be probably something like Fortnite. In terms of something, I'm glad Matt brought up Monster Hunter, because that kind of goes into my wheelhouse very nicely. In 2020, if my game of the year hadn't been Hades, it would have been Monster Hunter World Iceborne, the expansion for Monster Hunter World, because that expansion was so massive. It was basically like a second game, and it completely changed the way the end game of that game like plays and functions, and made so many quality of life changes that base Monster Hunter World and Iceborne are almost two different games. I mean, Iceborne is almost like more of a sequel to Monster Hunter World than an expansion to it. The other one that comes to mind too is the first time I kind of experienced this was Destiny had an expansion called The Taken King, which everybody argues out of everything in Destiny, that was the best version of it. And that completely changed the entire game, the way it played, all the structures it was built upon, the way you interacted with it. So I don't really know if I have an answer to that question, if those types of things shouldn't be considered for a game of the year. If it was something in the vein of like Iceborne or The Taken King, I think I would consider it, because that's almost like a brand new experience. If it's something like Call of Duty, you're just getting like maybe like a map pack or a new zombie map or something like that, then no. But I think maybe there's room for a discussion in there. I don't have enough personal experience with Elden Ring or Shadow of the Erdtree to know. Based on some of the stuff I watched and listened to, it seems like there was an element of that made it different the way you played and experienced it. And it was chunky enough that maybe it kind of felt like it was its own part of that game. I don't know. So that's an interesting topic you bring up for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Shadow of the Erdtree is unique in the sense that it's not even standalone DLC. There was a certain boss you had to have killed to gain access to it. I know, because I was going to play it until I found that out, and I was like, I'm not killing another boss. Screw that. I'm done with this game. Even though I beat Elden Ring. But the size of it was part of it, right? Like, it was a massive DLC, which is pretty typical for From Software, from what I understand, though I've not played all of them, that they tend to release these more difficult, massive DLCs. It happens often. But also, I think, and this isn't Keith's fault, I think people just want
visceral dismemberment
to argue about. Like, I didn't care that Shadow of the Erdtree was nominated.
100%.
I know Keith doesn't care, on the sense that Keith has many times said, I don't really care about any of it. Like, I'm interested in the conversation, right? Who cares about the Keeleys? But like, I think part of it comes from, well, it's something like we can push back at that, right? Well, that shouldn't be nominated. It's DLC. Claire Obscure shouldn't be nominated. It's not really an indie game, right? Whatever the thing is, like, I think you should be able to nominate whatever the hell you want. Who cares, right? I think there are like, yes, if you were nominating like a 20-minute DLC, but even that, like, I've played games this year that are 30 minutes long that are better than some 5-hour, 10-hour, 20-hour experiences. So like, length and size, this goes back to the money versus time versus is it worth a conversation that I know we've all had before, and I hate that conversation. It's important because it's a capitalist society, but also it's bunk. It doesn't mean anything. You can get more out of 30 minutes of art than you could out of a lifetime of experience, depending on what that art is. So I think the DLC conversation goes back to that on some level.
Piggybacking off that, I went and bought this year the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. I found out which boss I had to actually get through. It's very obscure. You have to go through a side quest to get to a side quest to eventually find this asshole wandering out on the snow plains of this. I got to him. I curb stomped him. I went into the DLC. I spent a lovely half hour looking around going, yep, this is sure more Elden Ring. I turned it off and I haven't gone back to it for the rest of the year. The question becomes, okay, this is very subjective to the user. What if there's a DLC that manages to somehow elevate the base game beyond its current borders? Should we have that conversation? Does that then devalue the base game? Does this suddenly go, hey, Game X we thought it was great until the 5-headed Hydra DLC showed up and turned the base game into
Doki Doki Literature Club.
Now we are only playing it to get to this and have that experience. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, again, it is bunk. It's all of it is as Carlin once put it, it's all
Doki Doki Literature Club.
It's all bad for you. But I don't know if those conversations have value. Should we have those conversations? Should we partition this even further and say, the base game was this, but the DLC should be taken as its own thing? And do we want to relitigate an entire category of discussion? I don't know if I have that much time left on this planet to do that.
So here's a question. Cyberpunk came out in 2020, right? I don't remember if it was nominated for Game of the Year, but for this question, let's say that it was. That game was, for all intents and purposes, not complete when it launched. There's no debating that. Should it have another shot at this point? Would it be fair?
I mean, let's be honest. There are 2 to 3 celebrities in at this point. I guess there's a little bit of the Hollywood machine behind it.
Well, it's also, as someone who's played it, it's an excellent game. But
I played it too. It fixed everything and made a whole lot out of it.
100%.
Again, but just my question is, should it have a second shot? I don't know. Has that door closed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the Hollywood machine part is a good point. I mean, when you've got Idris Elba and Keanu Reeves also pumping it can reinvigorate it. I mean, I think when Phantom Liberty came out, it could have qualified in the same way Elden Ring did. Phantom Liberty adds a whole new area and like another 5 to 10 hours of story or something. Maybe I'm overblowing that a little bit, but like, yeah. So I could so to that end, if it had gotten nominated when Phantom Liberty came out, and it might have, I don't know that it did, but I totally would think that's perfectly fine and fair because it added a whole separate narrative branch that can tie into the main story, but is also its own story, which is kind of the idea I think behind Erdtree being nominated is it's a whole separate world path, skill tree. Like it takes you to a different part of the Lands Between, basically.
I guess you can piggyback off the question too is, do we do that with other forms of media, entertainment, and art? I can't ever recall at the Grammys where a movie that gets like a director's cut gets like nominated again if it was already nominated. I don't know if that's ever happened. I can't say if like Taylor Swift puts out one of her albums like next year and it's like the super deluxe version has like a whole another 14 songs on it, if it should be up for like a Grammy again. I don't know, but I don't think music and movie, maybe that comparison is not helpful because music and movies aren't the same as video games because you largely aren't able to continually alter either of those things the way you can a video game because once those things come out, they're kind of like, that's what they are. And unless they like re-release them for fixed versions or whatever. So yeah, I don't really know. I would say if I would go back today and now analyze Monster Hunter World, it wouldn't be a vanilla. It would be with its Iceborne equivalent. So yeah, I guess, I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about. I can't imagine now if I have Cyberpunk on my list to play. I can't imagine that I'm going to be able to evaluate it in the state that it was before it was fixed or without the Phantom Liberty DLC. So what you're raising is a very interesting question and like how we perform our analysis of a thing that they figured out how to like change and make fixes over time. That's very interesting.
Because No Man's Sky certainly wasn't being considered Game of the Year when that came out in 2016 or 2017.
And it's drastically
Right?
different now. It's
like
drastically
literally a different
different
game now, even more drastic than Cyberpunk.
Yeah. And so would it have been, out of hand, out of pocket to throw that on the Game of the Year nomination for 2019 or whenever that game kind of like fully reverse course and
I think it'd be out of hand because like with the case of No Man's Sky, like where do you draw the line? Which of the 50 updates is the one where you decide?
It's not like a specific DLC. It's like
that's circling back to my initial question about ongoing games.
Yeah, I honestly, as much as I think Cyberpunk is my favorite, and I would argue technically the best open world game ever made, just from a technical execution, the density of that world and how many systems come together. But should it be retroactively nominated as Game of the Year? No, because it wasn't that when it came out. I mean, we talked about this last year. I know we talked about like other nomination categories. You could do like greatest comeback or greatest, like I do think that Cyberpunk does get its flowers online for turning it around. No Man's Sky gets his flowers. They've both been rewarded financially. The games have continued to sell. So it's not like the word is not getting out that these games are different than they were when they launched. I think you could recognize that the studios turn these games around in some other format, but I just don't see a way where you could fit it in to Game of the Year without just causing even more of the drama we love talking about, right? Like, it's just going to be more drama. So I just like, I just don't see a way you could do it. But I do think you should praise those games for doing that, and that they have, and the community and the online content creators have done it. And it has turned into sales for those games, so they are getting recognized for sure. I do think the idea of like more categories we talked, and it's been mentioned in this conversation too. Maybe you have more categories, or you have a different game awards show that is more granular, and you talk about like best ongoing service games or best DLCs or games that have had the best updates. Like, yeah, you could find ways to give them their rewards, but Game of the Year, I don't think it'd be fair. Cyberpunk, I played it at launch on PC. I beat it. Didn't have all the problems, but I replayed it with Phantom Liberty. And when I played it the year it came out, it was a little let down. It was like, that's a good game, but it's not great. And when I played the whole thing through with Phantom Liberty, it became my GOAT open world game. Okay, it is that different. There were probably 10 to 15 updates in between Phantom Liberty, and there's been 5 or 6 more after. So again, how do you decide was it this update that came out in 2024 and we're going to retroactively nominate it in 2024, or who decides that, and what are the criteria? It's just too nebulous.
Yeah, I feel like if we're sticking strictly to the definition of like what we're talking about in your episode, Game of the Year does feel very much like it's locked to like a specific, like, oh, this thing came out in this year, that's what it should be eligible for. I know it doesn't really cover like, you know, the amorphous, like I think Cyberpunk and like No Man's Sky are kind of like two of the extreme examples of games being fixed and getting significantly stratospherically better over time. You know, not every game is like that. So yeah, I don't know where that would like categorize Shadow of the Erdtree or something like that, where it's just more of like a traditional DLC and not something that's drastically fixing or overhauling the base structure of a game. I think Game of the Year feels like it should be at least specifically locked in the year that it came out. And if that is a DLC, I think maybe we have to like continue to ask ourselves and define and analyze like what that means for that DLC to be added to that game in terms of like an award. The rest of the stuff feels like it can be just relegated to that ongoing game category if it does have that component to it. Or yeah, maybe we need like a best like DLC category, and that would just fix that problem altogether.
I knew this question would tickle your brain, Eric, because I know, I don't know if it was off air, or if we've talked about it on either one of our podcasts, but you've asked me kind of the same question about, as a content creator who reviews video games, how do you go about reviewing a video game that was released broken, not released complete, versus covering it when it has been fixed? And I mean, my easy answer to that was just, well, I'm fortunate enough to cover video games that if they were released broken, they just stayed broken. Yeah. So, because there really wasn't any patching perfect weapon for the PlayStation, but fortunately we have people like Kade to do that for us now. So
I forgot about that game. That's a deep cut, dude.
Okay, we need to fix perfect weapon. That's put on the list.
There'll be a new video in
He's opening the
like
spreadsheet. I see him typing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming out. We'll see it in a month.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, we've talked about that before for sure. It's an interesting question. In terms of the type of analysis I do, that is that has a kind of a storytelling element to it. That's part of that game's story, right? Is, you know, you try to look at like, what was the purpose this game was made? What conditions was it made under? What happened to it when it came out? What is the ongoing legacy of that game? Like, that's all like questions that embedded in the way I like structure my episodes. But yeah, no, it's definitely a thought-provoking question for sure.
I think this is a good a time as any to finally close this up, and I'm proud of what we've done. You know, it took us 2 episodes, and I have one prompt left on the table here that I guess I don't really want to get into, and I think that's more of something Jeff Keighley can figure out, and maybe a documentary crew can figure out on their own time. But yeah, thank you guys for entertaining me on this little journey here. I set out to do the symposium last year when I was kind of more or less engaging with a lot of the conversations around Game of the Year, and kind of seeing what people were saying, kind of to the point that we were talking about up front, and just like in general of what the discussion was being had, and especially the discussion around Shadow of the Erd Tree, and kind of just wondering what people in general expect from Game of the Year and what they think about it personally. And I want to end this podcast on this, I guess, closing reflection about all of this. And we'll start with you, Kade. And I think you brought up the good point that it is ironic that we are talking about, we're creating discourse around Game of the Year while talking about discourse of Game of the Year, right? And so I think at the first part of this question is probably pretty obvious, but do you think Game of the Year discussions more or less bring the community closer together, or does it expose how fractured the gaming community actually is?
I think if most people listen to this podcast, it would bring people together because it's more just thought-provoking. Nobody's busting out hot takes for clips. You know, I think it just, I kind of categorize content in my mind as you have doom scrolling, ADD, brain rot, and then you have stuff that makes you think. And I enjoy both. I do enjoy both. Guilty pleasure. I enjoy the doom rot as well. But I think the game, most of the stuff we see online would be like ADD, brain rot stuff. That's kind of the engine of a lot of social media. But podcasts are different. So I think this discussion, I mean, it's the most relevant to the question. I think people would disagree with takes, but no one's going to be raising an army against their neighbor because they're that offended by something that was said on this podcast. However, Game of the Year discussions in general, like if I think about, I'm part of all guilty pleasures. I'm part of all these like gaming groups like Silent Hill Lovers on Facebook, and like the average discussion on those, I get infuriated just reading that there's people that think that like these type of conversations are a good use of their time by any stretch of the means. Like I get frustrated by proxy, and
you do have to remember, Kade, somebody went on YouTube and made a whole video calling us morons.
For what? For this last year's episode?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Oh, you didn't see that you didn't see that in the chat? Oh,
you didn't see that in the chat?
Yeah. It shows you how plugged in I am. I mean, there's always going to be like I said, even on my content, like I am shocked by how angry people get. But I think that's, I don't know. I like makes me lose hope in humans sometimes. But I also have to remember that I don't think this is the majority of people. The majority of people don't have time to make a YouTube video about how a bunch of random podcasters that aren't like really anyone in, like, as far as I know, none of us are like giant platforms. And so like, what are you doing with your life if you're making a video about how we're morons? Like, I just can't see just how you not have something better to do. I don't get it. I think for the most part, like podcast long form discussions, to answer your question in a short, succinct manner, long form discussions I think are generally good. And then I think short form content is generally divisive.
I don't think Game of the Year as a concept, as a flashpoint of conversation itself, has caused divisiveness. I think divisiveness has permeated most, if not all, discourse just because of the current climate that we kind of live in, not just politically, but just kind of across the board where social media and the internet and the algorithms that power it are very able to efficiently divide us into like categories that we can like find things, echo chambers that we agree with, like stuff that we, think, and it reinforces our opinions. And then the algorithm is further incentivized to like pit those echo chambers against each other and have them fight for more engagement, because that's how it works. And I think most communities have been impacted by that in one way or another. There is a certain level of toxicity. This seems like general level of baseline toxicity across the board that is incentivized to be inflammatory and peddle hot takes and be divisive, because that's how they get engagement, and they farm engagement. And it's a way of making a living. There is a subset of the video game community where the only conversation I outright reject is the kind of like
Dale Kojima
peddling like rage machine, where it's just like certain subsets of people shouldn't be in my video games, and it makes me very mad. I make videos about it, and that's the only conversation and content I churn out, because that's the only conversation I'm able to have, because I cannot do media literacy, and I think everything is propaganda trying to convert me to some agenda. That's like the only stuff that like I out and out will just refuse to engage with, because there's no point in wasting your time with that. And like Kate said, and where those conversations take place, it's just not even like worth your time to engage, because there's no amount of like analysis or like clever discourse that you can bring to that conversation to where you'll get those people to see your point of view. For the most part, everything outside of that, and I've found that circles being in circles with all of you guys, has been pretty good and pretty tame, and has caused me to think about things in a way that I have not thought about them before. So it's just unfortunate that like we've been divided up into these camps, and because our society is so like individualistic and like predicated on winning, there has to be a winner and loser, as there's literally football on the TV behind me. Game of the year has become a component of that, where it's like my thing must win the game of the year, because that shows that my tastes are the superior individualistic tastes. Now that I've finished psychoanalyzing the internet, I will pass it on to somebody else.
So a lot of things. I mean, Cade's right? Like, I think the loudest voices are the most omnipresent. They're not always the majority, but they are the loudest. And I also think that the public conversation around video games in the last year, just like most fandoms in general, are so toxic, I cannot tolerate them. It's why I've talked about pulling back from social media. Yes, I still post on Blue Sky a lot, but it's usually a lot of bullshit or dumb jokes. And then occasionally the game I beat or whatever. But like, I've dug deeper into Discords and quote unquote echo chambers, because yes, I want to talk with voices and people who have open minds and want to have a conversation, not people who are going to say my queer game is making them gay. And for the record, yes, I'm trying to make you gay. That's a threat. I just, I have no patience for that stuff, right? One of the reasons like I picked up Ghost of Yote is because I want to champion Eric Ishii, because I've adored their work for a long time, and they got the
visceral dismemberment
end of the stick from all of the morons in the community who are like, a woman in my game? I can't be a guy? Look, I liked Jin Sakai a lot. I thought he was an excellent character, but the reason those people were mad had nothing to do with Jin. It could have been anybody. It's because she was a woman. She was playing a woman, and that they didn't want a woman as their main character, right? And that stuff in relation to Game of the Year, like, I would want that game to win Game of the Year alone just to rub it in those people's face, right? Above anything else. But all that said, I think where Game of the Year discussions still bring people together is like what's been said before. The Discords we're in, the communities we're in, the engagement that we're diving into. The broader gaming community is more fractured, I think, because it's a lot of things, but I think it was Eric who said it best. Like, most people buy 2 or 3 video games a year. They're not like us lunatics, shining the light on me mostly, for playing over 54 games in a year. And it's still only November, so I've got at least a few more to go. It's just, that's not reality. People don't do that, right? And so, on the same level, I've become more patient for some of the people who champion Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever, because that's the one game they've been looking forward to all year, and it comes out every year. And so, like, while yes, some of those folks are absolutely abhorrent, a lot of them also are just, they want that one game. And when it's bad, they're upset because that was the one game they wanted. It's why a lot of people lost their minds over Cyberpunk, regardless of the fact that it was kind of deserved because that game came out in a terrible state. But like, that was the game, the one game they were looking forward to that year, and it comes out in an unplayable state. Of course they'd be upset, right? It's in the same way that you're looking forward to a movie all year. It comes out and it's bad and you're upset. It's $30 versus $60 to $100, but still, right? And so I think that at the end of the day, it's hard to say whether I care what the majority of the gaming public cares when it comes to Game of the Year. But for groups like this Symposium, and the Discords we're in and the communities we're in, I still look forward to it every year. I know for a fact, we've been picking on him all episode, and I love Dave with my whole heart. Whatever Dave's Game of the Year might be Claire Obscura still. But like, often his Game of the Year has not been my Game of the Year. And that's what I love about following a creator like him, or like anyone on this call, or tons of other folks in our community, right? Like, you know, the fact that Keith will talk about his favorite games that he played this year, because he didn't play a ton of new games. So it's just, what did he play this year, right? Things like that, I think, are just as valuable, and why I come to these kinds of communities for the broader Game of the Year takes.
Well, you know, I find it funny. The group that I have been lucky enough to be a part of with all of you, you've all been incredibly thoughtful. I feel all of you have added so much to the conversation around games. Every one of you brings your own component. We've all had good discussions. For those of you whose shows I've been a guest on, for those of you who have listened to my show, I feel like in a lot of ways I'm just trying to catch up and do my best to be thoughtful, to make content that is at least positive. You may not agree with me. We may not necessarily agree with each other, but we're adults. We know how to talk to one another without being complete assholes. We can have a conversation now. Large times we are all in agreement. It's not that often that we have disagreements, but again, we can do that and we can go, well, I simply disagree, and we can move on. I wish more people would listen to us. I know I am an absolute
Doki Doki Literature Club
nobody in this field. I am some vestigial organ out here putting my stuff in the atmosphere. Hope to God some people listen in. When my time is over, I will have disappeared into the woodwork, and guys like Jeff Keighley will still be going on. Probably the asshole who made the These Guys Are Morons video will be at this long after I've probably wrapped up my thing, because he's going to have nothing but rage bait and misery, even if he's a happy guy in real life. I don't give a
Doki Doki Literature Club
what this dude thinks of me or anyone else. You want to be a miserable prick? Go be a miserable prick on your own time. Please go bury yourself if it's that bad for you, my friend, or go get help. That would be the preferable route. We can have these wonderful conversations within our communities, this course, the call we're on, the call with a lot of our other friends in the podcasting sphere, the Retro Hangover guys, Dave, although I've only gotten to be on a show once, it was a great conversation. I'm glad I was able to be a part of it. Rick at Pixel Project, Secret Levels, all the other guys who've been with us in various pieces along the way. And even shows outside of that many of you and myself have been able to guest on, which are not within our individual group. We've all brought something special to the table. But I realize that we are the anomaly. By large part, the gaming discourse is still, for whatever reason I don't understand, rage bait. It's anger, it's hate, it's I didn't get what I wanted out of game X, or there was a queer character, or there was a woman in my game. Personally, I'm not going to be bothered by a game that has any of that representation. Awesome. I'm glad it's there. I'm just an average white dude. Cool. I get to see something from someone else's perspective. I play games not to be like myself. I play games to be different, to see different worlds, different imaginations, different perspectives, because it helps me inform the world that I'm inhabiting. For, as I've said many times in the past year, ever since my father passed, my own concept of mortality has been
Doki Literature Club.
I may not have a lot of time left myself. I better get on with whatever I intend. It's also, I think, probably humbled me a little bit more and made me make sure that I need to be a better person for that being what that is. Now, as far as the game of the year, yeah, a lot of this is still fueled by tribalism. It's still fueled by the vocal minority online that is just screaming for attention to get whatever its end goal is. I don't know, to upset people, to soothe their own ego, to just be heard. I think in a lot of cases, the problem is people don't feel like they're heard anymore. So we're seeing it's not just in games, it's political, it's religious, it's racial still, it's, concepts of what is humanity. And I feel like the worst among us are getting way too much of the share. Was that ever going to stop? I don't know. We're 10 millennia in as a human species, and it hasn't. I don't know if it ever will. Can we turn it around? I would like to say yes, but that's on an individual thing. And I think it comes down to, and not to toot our own horns here, toot, but I think it comes down to people like us being that small bulwark and saying, no, we're going to have reason, we're going to have discussions, we're going to have empathy, and we're going to do it in an adult, forward-facing manner. But we're fortunate, and I feel that unfortunately maybe a lot of people are not. And that may drive some of the divisiveness we see in games.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I also find myself incredibly fortunate to know people like you, creators like you, and also be involved in the community that you guys have built. And, coming into this discussion last year, and I think I mentioned it on that episode, and that I wanted to have this round table of creators from all sorts of different backgrounds, not only in the kind of content that you create, but also just like in general, like your different, like you've all, except for Kade, has not been formally on like a regular episode of mine. So I don't know a lot of his like personal background with gaming. I've all talked with you about where did you start with video games? Where did you come from? When did it actually become a thing that has stayed with you for your entire life? And so since I'm, somewhat familiar with all of that, I knew you guys would have really interesting perspectives in the way that you engage with the medium, and then how you guys engage with the community as well. And for me, it's like perspective, because I don't engage with a lot of that stuff. Like Matt said earlier, I just don't care much for a lot of modern gaming, and even the debates and discussions that are being had about it, because I'm too stuck in the past. I'm the old man yelling at clouds playing my 40-year-old video games or whatever, and fortunately for me, I've also removed myself for the most part from social media outside of promoting this podcast, essentially. And so I don't see a lot of the vitriol and the Gamergate stuff and all of the toxic
World premieres
that's out there, because I'm not in it anymore. I've seen it. Believe me, I have seen it, and that's why I don't want to participate in it. And so for me, it's just, I just kind of leave it alone. And so instead, what I get is you happy bunch and you great people and your communities. And so going into the episode last year and knowing that I was going to have the people on that I wanted on, I would kind of know that we would I didn't know where the discussion exactly was going to go, but I know that we would be able to talk about it and bring up some interesting things that other people aren't actually even really thinking about when they go on Twitter and being like, what the
World premieres.
Erd Tree? Why is this on here? Like, we would be a little more nuanced about everything. And that's exactly what I got. And honestly, I'm a little sad that there isn't going to be a part 3 because I don't know what else we could milk from this discussion, honestly. So I'm a little sad we won't be doing this again next year. But with that said, I do want to thank you guys for taking the time out again to talk about what a game of the year is. We probably still don't have an answer to that, 4 hours of content later, but it was fun talking about it either way. So thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. With that said, many returning listeners will know exactly who you guys are, but in case they don't know, this is your spotlight to let people know where you come from, what you do on the internet. And we will go out the same way we came in, which I don't think a doctor medically would advise we do, but we should do it. We should do it anyway. Matt, let the people know where you come from, what you do.
From that. I got whiplash from that transition. But anyway, I'll keep it quick since I do too much, as you know. The best place to find everything I do is djstormageddon.com. Takes you to my link tree. Has both my podcast, the Patreon for Fun and Games, my merch store, all of my social links. If you want to yell at me directly, please don't. I'm sensitive. If you want to have a nice conversation, however, you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm djstormageddon.com over there. And I'm somewhat active on Instagram at DJ_Stormageddon.
I'm Gaming Memories Pod, which is ironic because I have not put out a podcast in over a year. But that's my handle. I do a lot of emulation content where I take old games and try to do black magic, like run them in 144 frames and inject ray trace lighting and see if that works. And sometimes it's successful and many times it's not. You can find that on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram are the main 3. I will be putting out some podcasts again at some point. And if you had to pick somewhere, please go to my YouTube. I have some more long form content that I'm trying to get the ball rolling on. Like I just did a video on who actually did the twin stick controls for FPS first, because I thought it was Alien Resurrection. I'd heard that repeated a bajillion times, and I regurgitated it like the uneducated swine I am, and turned out that I wasn't. That's not quite technically true. Stuff like that. So that's also Gaming Memories Pod on YouTube, even though there's very little podcast content on there. I don't want to change my handles. Gaming Memories, unfortunately, is taken everywhere. And otherwise, I have to do like Gaming Memories 1, 2 or something like that. I'm like, I'll just leave the pod on there. I'll probably do podcasts again someday.
And Eric, listen, we're having a big old Eric sandwich the next couple of weeks. But in case somebody doesn't know who you are for whatever reason, where can they find you?
I'm Eric. I host the Unlockables podcast, which I bill as the story of video games so people play them and the memories made along the way. The easiest place to find all of this stuff is linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. Has all the podcasters on there. It has my YouTube channel, which I am trying to do more stuff on, but failing miserably. And then if you're interested, since Keith mentioned it, I mentioned it. I have a side project called 9 to 5 Bears, where I talk about my favorite football team every week with one of my coworkers before our actual jobs, which has been pretty fun to learn how to like do more skills and be on camera and stuff. I don't really have like anything set up for that. So just search 9 to 5 Bears. That's the number 9. TO, the number 5 Bears. We're on YouTube. That's where I promote most. I'd like to get the YouTube more subscribers. I think we're like on Spotify and Apple and Amazon Music and all that stuff. But if you aren't like from Chicago or a fan of the Chicago Bears American football team, it probably wouldn't be of any interest to you. So I don't know. It's out there if you want to check it out.
All right. I'm Phil, and my show is Deleted Saves. I talk about the games that have stayed with me long after I turned them off and deleted the save file, and what those meant to me. Currently, I'm doing a long series on retrospectives of a bunch of games that I didn't feel I could give enough push behind a full episode, but I'm kind of collecting them all together. My most recent episode that's out at the time of this recording is a short form on Tunic and Death's Door, as Zelda So likes, as I called them. If you're looking for me, if anything I have said in the past couple of hours is of any interest to you, my podcast is available on all major platforms, Apple, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Wherever you find yours, you can probably find me. I'm on Blue Sky at Deleted Saves Pod. I'm on Instagram at Deleted Saves Podcast. I may not be I don't have a Discord of my own, but I'm probably in a Discord around. So if you feel like contacting me, telling me I'm a moron, disagreeing with one of my takes about a game where that's loved by the community, but I didn't like for some reason, feel free. I may not respond. I may snark at you, but it's all part of the game. And yeah, I have a Patreon too. It's very tiny. If you think anything I said is of value, it's there. If not, you can still kind of join for free. It's all good. And yeah, it's about where I can be found.
And of course, I back everything these guys do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them on here and they wouldn't have appeared on my show multiple times. So except Kade. Kade, I need to get you on a regular episode. I need to remind myself to send you a spreadsheet.
I was saying, once you get to the PS1, Kade can just live on your show, probably.
Kade is the biggest PS1 fan I've ever met. So, favorite game console of all time.
I mean, I'm glad you realized the truth.
With that said, well, we're gonna roll on into more Game of the Year content. Can you believe it?
What?
It's a whole month of Game of the Year content. Isn't that ironic? Weird. But I'm doing it with a little bit of a twist. And if you're not sick of Eric, I've got some good news for you, because next time on the podcast, I've got another roundtable discussion with, of course, Eric returning, B. Ross from Super Garbage Day, and one Chris Copleen of the Retro Hangover podcast. And we'll be talking about a game of the year, the year of 2005, which was definitely scientifically proven by yours truly, Resident Evil 4, amongst a couple of other favorites from 2005. This project I am tentatively calling, I think I've settled on it, I shouldn't say tentatively, but it is a project that I am calling Game of the Yesteryear. So, with that said, thank you guys once again for joining me. Thank you guys for supporting the podcast. And I will talk to you guys next week.